You wake up the same way you have for the past 12 years, to the harsh buzz of your chronometer cutting through the perpetual twilight of Hive Tertius. The sound echoes off the corrugated metal walls of your hab unit, a space barely large enough for a cot, a small food processor, and the ancient cogitator terminal that connects you to your life's work in the administratum. This is your world, Matthias Corven, Senior Clerk, Subdivision 7742, Department of Resource Allocation. Your universe extends exactly 47 steps from your sleeping alcove to your desk in the vast processing center where billions of data points flow through your fingers daily. But this morning feels different. The first sign isn't dramatic. It never is when the universe decides to devour you whole. It starts with a sound that doesn't belong, the distant hum of anti-grav engines, too refined, too powerful for the usual cargo haulers that service your sector. You pause, your hand halfway to the recaf dispenser, and listen. The sound grows closer, deeper, accompanied by something else, a rhythmic thudding that seems to shake the very bones of the hive structure around you. Footsteps, heavy, measured, moving with the kind of purposeful precision that makes your hindbrain scream warnings your conscious mind hasn't yet processed. You've heard stories, whispered in the break rooms and communal eating areas, about mornings that start exactly like this. Mornings when the golden giants come calling. The recaf maker cycles through its familiar routine, grinding processed protein and synthetic caffeine into something resembling the ancient beverage it's named after. Steam rises from the cup, carrying the acrid scent that normally signals the beginning of another day of dutiful service to the Emperor. But your hand trembles as you reach for it, and the liquid sloshes against the sides of the ceramic mug, a mug decorated with the imperial aquila and the words, "Faithful service unto death." You've read that motto thousands of times. This morning, for the first time, you truly understand what it means. The footsteps stop outside your hab block. The entire structure, housing nearly 10,000 souls in stacked living units that stretch up into the perpetual smog layer, falls silent. Even the ever-present hum of the air recyclers seems to pause. In that moment of absolute quiet, you hear something that will haunt your remaining hours, the soft whisper of parchment being unrolled. Knock, knock, knock. 3 measured strikes against reinforced plasteel, each impact delivering more force than an industrial hammer. You know with the terrible certainty of a man watching his own execution that those knocks are meant for you. Matthias Corven. The voice that follows carries the weight of 10 millennia of authority. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be. Every syllable resonates with a power that makes your bones ache. By decree of the High Lords of Terra, by the will of the Emperor of Mankind, your service is required. Your legs betray you. The recaf cup slips from numb fingers, shattering against the floor in a spray of brown liquid and ceramic fragments. You want to run, to hide, to pretend this is happening to someone else. Instead, you find yourself moving toward the door, your body responding to an authority that transcends conscious thought. The door slides open with a pneumatic hiss, and you come face to face with divinity incarnate. The Adeptus Custod stands nearly 3 meters tall, his golden armor catching and reflecting the dim lumens of the corridor in ways that seem to defy the laws of physics. His helm is a masterwork of artifice, crafted in the likeness of an avenging angel, with eye lenses that burn with an inner fire. Behind him, 2 more of his kind flank the entrance, their guardian spears held at perfect attention. These are the Emperor's own guards, the most perfect warriors humanity has ever produced, and they have come for you. Matthias Corven, the Custodes repeats, consulting an ornate scroll that bears seals you recognize from the most sacred imperial documents. Age 34 standard Terran years, bloodline traced to original Terran stock. Genetic markers indicate optimal calcium density and psychic resonance suitable for throne service. You have been selected. The words wash over you like ice water. Selected. Such a simple word to encompass the end of everything you are, everything you've ever been, everything you might have become. Around you, doors crack open as your neighbors peer out with expressions of horror and religious awe. Mrs. Kellyan from 2 units down actually falls to her knees, weeping prayers of gratitude that the honor hasn't fallen to her family. Honor, that's what they're calling it. There must be some mistake, you hear yourself saying, though your voice sounds thin and distant. I'm nobody special. I just process shipping manifests and resource allocation reports. Surely the Emperor has no need of. The Custodes raises one gauntleted hand, and your words die in your throat. There is no mistake. The throne hungers, and your bones have been deemed worthy to sustain the master of mankind. This is the highest honor any mortal can aspire to. Behind his perfect pronunciation and flawless diction, you catch something that chills you more than anything else: absolute, unwavering belief. This warrior saint genuinely sees your impending death as a gift beyond price. In his eyes, reflected in those burning lenses, you see yourself not as Matthias the man, but as Matthias the resource, already categorized and allocated for consumption. You have 1 hour to prepare yourself, the Custodes continues. Gather no possessions save personal effects of sentimental value weighing no more than 2 kilograms. Say your farewells. Make your peace with the Emperor's will. 1 hour. 60 minutes to process the end of your existence, to say goodbye to everyone you've ever cared about, to reconcile yourself with a fate you never chose and cannot escape. You think of your sister Myra, working a double shift in the water recycling plant 6 levels down. You think of old Hendrik, the veteran guardsman who taught you to play regicide in the communal area. You think of the half-finished report sitting on your cogitator terminal, data that will now never be processed, numbers that will remain forever unreconciled. The Custodes doesn't wait for your acknowledgement. They never do. The golden giant simply turns and begins his measured march back toward the transport lifts, his brothers falling into perfect formation beside him. Their footsteps echo in the corridor, each impact a countdown to your doom. You stand in your doorway watching them disappear around the corner and finally understand what it means to be truly alone. Around you, life continues, ventilation systems cycling, neighbors whispering prayers and condolences, children crying because they don't understand why the adults are so frightened. But for you, everything has stopped. You are already dead. You simply haven't finished dying yet. The Emperor protects, they say. But sometimes, you're beginning to realize the Emperor also feeds. Deep beneath the surface of Terra, in chambers that haven't seen natural light for millennia, the Logos Enginum Mortalis hums with the sound of inevitable death. This is where humanity's greatest minds, both flesh and machine, perform calculations that would drive lesser beings to madness. They are determining, with mathematical precision, which human beings must die today to keep the God Emperor alive tomorrow. Adept Teramo Vex has been performing these calculations for 73 years. His organic brain, enhanced with 17 different cogitator implants and connected to processing matrices that span entire city blocks, processes data streams that represent the lives and deaths of trillions. To him, each human soul is a variable in an equation that must balance perfectly, or all of humanity dies screaming in the darkness between stars. You might wonder how such decisions are made. How do you choose who lives and who feeds the Golden Throne? The answer is both simpler and more horrifying than you could imagine. It begins with the Census Mortalis, the most comprehensive surveillance network ever devised. Every citizen of the Imperium, from the lowest underhive scum to the High Lords themselves, exists as a data point in this vast system. Your genetic code, analyzed from birth. Your psychological profile, updated with every interaction with Imperial authorities. Your productivity metrics, your loyalty ratings, your spiritual purity assessments, all of it feeds into the machine that will one day decide if you live or die. The selection criteria are both precise and perverse. Age is a factor. The throne prefers subjects between 25 and 45 standard Terran years, when bone density reaches its peak and psychic potential remains strong. Genetic markers matter enormously. Certain bloodlines, particularly those tracing back to original Terran stock, possess qualities that make their sacrifice more nutritious to the Emperor's eternal hunger. But it's not merely physical attributes that determine your fate. The machine analyzes your spiritual resonance, your capacity to channel the Emperor's divine will even in death. Tech priests conduct random psychic screenings throughout the Imperium, measuring bioelectric fields and soul pattern intensity. They're looking for a specific frequency, a harmonic that resonates with the Emperor's own psychic signature. If you possess it, congratulations. You've won a lottery you never wanted to enter. The quotas are staggering in their scope and horrifying in their mundane bureaucracy. Each world in the Imperium must provide not only the traditional tithes of soldiers, resources, and manufactured goods, but also a carefully calculated number of human bones. The calculations account for population density, genetic diversity, industrial output, and strategic importance. A hive world might sacrifice 50,000 souls annually, while an agricultural world contributes a mere 1,000. The mathematics are perfect. The human cost is immeasurable. Watch Adept Vex as he processes today's selection from Hive World Armageddon. His mechadendrite tentacles dance across holographic displays showing millions of citizen profiles. Each face represents a life, a collection of hopes and fears and dreams, but to Vex they are simply data points to be evaluated and sorted. Bone density, optimal. Genetic markers, acceptable. Psychic resonance, within acceptable parameters. Productivity rating, moderate. Loyalty assessment, adequate. Selection confirmed. With a thought transmitted directly from his enhanced brain to the processing matrices, another name joins the list. Another family will wake tomorrow to the sound of approaching custods. Another life becomes a transaction in humanity's ongoing negotiations with extinction. The most disturbing aspect isn't the scale, though the numbers are vast beyond comprehension. It isn't the efficiency, though the system operates with a precision that would be admirable if it weren't so utterly horrifying. The most disturbing aspect is the necessity of it all, because here's what you must understand. Without this constant sacrifice, without this perpetual feeding of human lives into the Golden Throne's hunger, the Emperor dies. And when the Emperor dies, the Astronomicon fails. The warp storms come. Humanity's scattered worlds become isolated points of light in an ocean of chaos and darkness, picked off one by Xeno's predators and demonic hordes, until nothing remains but screaming and the laughter of thirsting gods. The Logos Enginum doesn't make these calculations out of malice or madness. It performs them because the alternative to organized, systematic human sacrifice is the complete extinction of the human species. Every name on every list represents not just a death, but a choice. This person dies so that billions of others might live another day. Adept Vex has processed 7 million individual death selections during his decades of service. He remembers none of their names, but the machine remembers everything. In its vast memory banks, every sacrifice is recorded, cataloged, and analyzed for efficiency improvements. The system learns from each death, refining its selection criteria to maximize the spiritual energy extracted from each sacrifice, while minimizing the impact on imperial productivity. Sometimes, late in his sleep cycle when the processing load is lighter, Vex allows himself to wonder about the lives behind the numbers. Does the factory worker from Cadia Prime have children? Did the administratum clerk from Vestroia ever find love? These thoughts are inefficient, wasteful, borderline heretical. He purges them with chemical suppressants and returns to his holy work. The selection notices go out in real time, transmitted across the galaxy through astropathic relay networks and quantum entanglement communicators. On 10,000 worlds, courier servitors begin their journeys to carry death warrants to unsuspecting citizens. The Adeptus Custodes receive their assignments and begin their solemn processions. The vast machinery of imperial logistics adjusts transport schedules and processing quotas to accommodate the incoming tide of human sacrifice. You ask how they choose who dies. The answer is simple. They choose perfectly, efficiently, and without mercy. They choose based on mathematical models that account for every variable except the one that matters most, that each selection represents the complete destruction of an irreplaceable human soul. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the cruelest aspect of the selection process is its very perfection. There are no random deaths here, no meaningless casualties of war or disease. Every sacrifice is deliberate, calculated, chosen. When your name appears on the list, it's not because of bad luck or cruel fate. It's because you have been scientifically determined to be the precise individual whose death will best serve the Emperor's eternal hunger. The machine has looked at your entire existence, every choice you've made, every breath you've taken, every dream you've harbored, and decided that all of it is worth exactly one day of keeping the Golden Throne burning. One day out of the 10,000 years it has burned already, and the unknown millennia it must burn still. The Emperor protects, they say. But the Emperor also selects, and tomorrow, somewhere in the vast Imperium of Man, the Logos Enginum will hum to life once again, and new names will be added to the list. The only question that matters is whether one of those names will be yours. The transport ship Eternal Devotion was not built for comfort. Stretching nearly 30 kilometers from bow to stern, its cargo holds were designed to carry millions of tons of raw materials across the void between stars. Today, it carries something infinitely more precious and exponentially more tragic: 47,000 human souls making their final journey to Terra. You find yourself in Hold Tertius, a cavernous space that could easily accommodate a small city. The ceiling disappears into shadows 40 meters above your head, supported by massive adamantine girders that groan under the ship's acceleration. The air smells of recycled atmosphere, industrial lubricants, and the unmistakable scent of fierce sweat from tens of thousands of bodies, pressed together in conditions that would make a penal colony look luxurious. This is where you meet the others who share your fate. Matthias Corven sits on a simple metal bench, clutching a holopict of his sister Myra with hands that haven't stopped shaking since the Custodes came calling 72 hours ago. Next to him, Sister Agatha Solen maintains her devotions, her weathered fingers working the beads of her imperial rosary with mechanical precision. She's been selected despite, or perhaps because of, her 63 years of faithful service in the ecclesiarchy. Her voice carries the steady cadence of prayers she's recited millions of times, but there's a tremor in it now that wasn't there before. Across the narrow aisle between bench rows, a young man named Juvec Torino stares at the deck plating with eyes that burn with barely contained rage. At 19 standard years, he's the youngest person you can see, selected from the gang territories of Hive Volgar's Undercity. His augmetic left arm, a crude replacement for flesh lost in territorial warfare, clicks and whirs as he clenches and unclenches his fist. He hasn't spoken since boarding, but his intentions are written in the tension of his shoulders and the way his eyes constantly map the distances to exits and guard positions. The guards themselves are a mixture of Imperial Navy armsmen and Militarum Tempestus science, their faces hidden behind reflective visors that turn them into anonymous enforcers of Imperial will. They patrol the aisles with casual efficiency, their hellguns held at ready positions that seem relaxed but can target any point in the hold within milliseconds. These men and women have made this journey dozens of times before. To them, you are cargo that happens to be alive, for now. Captain Mordian Heston observes from the observation deck that overlooks the cargo holds, his naval uniform immaculate despite the journey's hardships. He's been commanding transports like this for 37 years, watching hundreds of thousands of selected souls make their final journey to Terra. His log entries describe the passengers in purely statistical terms: cargo condition, stable; mortality rate during transit, 0.3%; expected delivery, 46,859 viable specimens. He long ago stopped thinking of them as people. You discover that the journey to Terra takes 6 months in the warp, 6 months of existing in a space between spaces where time moves like thick oil and the barriers between reality and nightmare grow paper-thin. The ship's gellar fields protect you from the worst predations of chaos, but they cannot shield you from the knowledge of where you're going and why. It's during the third week that the conversations begin. "I keep thinking this must be a mistake," Matthias says during the daily ration distribution. The food is surprisingly good. High-protein paste enriched with vitamins and minerals designed to keep your bones strong and your marrow healthy. Everything about your treatment speaks to your value as a resource to be preserved until consumption. "I'm nobody special, just a clerk. Surely they need clerks more than they need." He can't finish the sentence. Sister Agatha places a gnarled hand on his shoulder. "The Emperor's plans are beyond our understanding, child. If we have been chosen for this honor, it is because he has seen something in us worthy of the sacrifice." Her faith is genuine, but you can see the cracks forming in it. Even the most devout struggle to reconcile their impending death with concepts of divine mercy. Juvek finally speaks, his voice rough with barely contained fury. "Honor? You call this honor? We're being murdered for their convenience, fed to their corpse god like protein paste to keep their precious empire running." Several passengers gasp at his blasphemy, but others nod in silent agreement. "I say we take some of these Navy bastards with us when we go." This is when you learn about the pacification protocols. The ship's atmosphere is laced with mild psychoactive compounds designed to reduce aggression and promote docility. The daily rations contain additional mood stabilizers. Even the lighting is carefully calibrated to suppress the production of hormones associated with violence and rebellion. Every aspect of your environment has been engineered to keep you passive and compliant during the journey. But Juvek's augmetic arm has its own air filtration system, and gang warfare in the underhives teaches you to recognize chemical pacification. He's been building resistance to the compounds, trading portions of his rations to others in exchange for theirs, secretly accumulating the drugs in his system to build tolerance while appearing to succumb like everyone else. On the 73rd day of the journey, he makes his move. The attack comes during the sleep cycle, when the holds are dimmed and most passengers drift in chemically induced lethargy. Juvek has fashioned weapons from scavenged materials, sharpened pieces of metal torn from bench fittings, crude explosives made from cleaning compounds. His plan is simple: kill as many guards as possible, fight his way to the ship's bridge, and either escape or die trying. He manages to kill 3 armsmen before the Scions respond. Their Hellgun volleys light up the hold like miniature stars, the superheated las bolts punching through Juvek's augmetic arm and into his chest cavity. He dies screaming defiance, his blood pooling on the deck plates while 47,000 witnesses watch in stunned silence. Captain Heston's voice echoes through the hold's voxcasters minutes later. Let this serve as a reminder of the futility of resistance. The Emperor's will cannot be denied. Those who accept their fate with grace honor him with their compliance. Those who resist serve only their own selfish desires. The body is removed within the hour. The blood is cleaned away with industrial solvents. New armsmen take the positions of the dead guards. Within a day, it's as if Juvek Torino never existed, except for the new regulations restricting movement during sleep cycles and the additional psychoactive compounds that leave everyone feeling even more detached from reality. Sister Agatha stops saying her prayers aloud after that. Matthias stops looking at the holopict of his sister. The conversations die away, replaced by a listless acceptance that settles over the hold like a burial shroud. You realize that this is the point, not just to transport you to Terra, but to break down your resistance, your sense of self, your very humanity during the journey. By the time the ship translates out of warp space at the edge of the Sol system, you are no longer 47,000 individuals with names and histories and hopes. You have become what you were always meant to be in the eyes of the Imperium, 47,000 units of raw material ready for processing. The last thing you see before the transfer shuttles arrive is Terra itself, growing larger in the viewports with each passing hour. It should be a moment of awe, seeing humanity's birthworld after months in the void. Instead, it feels like watching your own grave being dug. You are almost home, home to die. The first glimpse of Terra breaks what remains of your sanity in ways you didn't know were possible. Through the scratched transparisteel of the transport shuttle's viewports, you watch humanity's birthworld resolve from a distant point of light into something that defies comprehension. This is not the blue marble of ancient pick captures, the world of oceans and continents your species once called home. This is something else entirely, a construct of such impossible scale that your mind refuses to process it correctly. Terra has been rebuilt from core to crust as a monument to death and devotion. The continents themselves have been carved into the likeness of the imperial aquila, their coastlines reshaped by technologies that could move mountains like children's blocks. Where once oceans sparkled blue under Sol's light, now vast urban sprawls stretch from horizon to horizon, their spires reaching so high they pierce the upper atmosphere. The entire planet pulses with the light of billions of structures, each one a prayer made manifest in adamantine and faith. But it's the palace that destroys your ability to think rationally. The Imperial Palace doesn't simply occupy a portion of Terra's surface. It is the surface, stretching across continents and burrowing down through the planet's crust like a golden cancer. Its highest spires disappear into the void above the atmosphere, tethered to orbital platforms that could each house populations larger than the hive worlds you came from. The walls alone are hundreds of kilometers high, built from materials that catch and reflect light in ways that make them appear to be constructed from crystallized sunlight. You try to find reference points, some way to make sense of the scale, but everything defeats comprehension. Individual buttresses are the size of hive cities. Decorative elements are larger than the mountain ranges of your homeworld. The palace doesn't simply dwarf human architecture. It operates on a level of construction that seems to mock the very concept of human limitations. Sister Agatha weeps openly as the shuttle descends toward the palace's receiving platforms, but her tears aren't born of fear. They're tears of religious ecstasy, the reaction of a mind confronted with physical proof of divinity. "The God Emperor's house," she whispers, her voice filled with wonder and terror in equal measure. "We are coming home to the God Emperor's house." Matthias presses his face against the viewport, trying to spot landmarks from ancient Terran geography texts. "There," he says, pointing to a structure that rises from what might once have been the Atlantic Ocean. "That could be where old America used to be, and that massive spire complex, maybe that's built on the ruins of Europa." But the scale makes identification impossible. If any trace of ancient Terra remains beneath the palace, it's buried under millennia of construction that began when the first human settlements were little more than cave paintings. The landing platform where your shuttle touches down is larger than most cities. Thousands of other transports crowd the vast expanse of reinforced rockcrete, their human cargo being processed through intake facilities that stretch beyond the horizon. You are one droplet in an ocean of sacrifice, one voice in a chorus of the condemned that spans continents. The Adeptus Custodes who escort you from the shuttle move with the same measured precision you remember from your selection, but here in their natural environment, they seem even more alien. Their golden armor reflects the palace's impossible architecture, making them appear to be walking pieces of the structure itself. When they speak, their voices carry harmonics that resonate with the palace walls, as if they and their home are part of a single, vast instrument tuned to frequencies beyond human perception. "Welcome to Terra," your escort announces as you're formed into processing columns with thousands of other arrivals. You stand now in the holiest place in human space, the throne world of the master of mankind. Your bones will join with his glory. Your essence will sustain his eternal vigil. There is no greater honor in all the galaxy. The processing begins immediately. You're herded through corridors that could accommodate starships, their walls decorated with murals that tell the history of humanity's expansion into the stars. But these aren't celebratory images, they're warnings. Every mural depicts the same theme: humanity beset by enemies on all sides, saved only by the Emperor's sacrifice. Demons tear apart worlds while the Golden Throne burns brighter. Xeno's fleets shatter against Imperial defenses powered by human devotion. Chaos cultists writhe in agony as the Emperor's light burns away their corruptions. The message is unmistakable. This is why you must die. Medical examination comes next, conducted in chambers that combine the sterility of surgical suites with the grandeur of cathedral spaces. Tech priests and apothecaries work in teams, their augmetic hands and surgical mechadendrites probing every aspect of your physical being with instruments that feel older than human civilization. They measure bone density with scanners that peer directly into your molecular structure. They test your blood for mineral content and genetic markers. They examine your teeth, your hair, the calcium deposits in your joints, cataloging every element of your being that will soon feed the Emperor's hunger. Subject 847,293, the lead tech priest announces as servoskulls record his findings. Male, age 34 standard Terran years, bone density within optimal parameters, calcium content elevated, suggesting superior marrow production capacity. Genetic markers indicate 12% compatibility with Imperial bloodlines. Psychic resonance measures 2.3 kappa, suitable for throne-feeding protocols. You realize they're not examining you to ensure your health. They're determining how best to consume you. The quarters where you're housed for your final days are surprisingly comfortable. Individual cells with actual beds, functioning hygiene facilities, and meal dispensers that provide food of better quality than you've ever tasted. The irony isn't lost on you. The Imperium treats its sacrificial victims better than it treats most of its living citizens. You're valuable now in ways you never were when you had a future. It's during these final days that you encounter others who have served the palace for decades, janitors and food preparers and maintenance staff who have grown numb to the constant stream of sacrifice. They speak of the process in matter-of-fact terms, like discussing the weather or shift schedules. Been working here 47 years, says Donal Varick, a grizzled man whose job involves cleaning the intake facilities between transports. Seen maybe 2 million souls come through these halls. They all ask the same questions, you know. Why me? What happens next? Does it hurt? After a while, you stop hearing the individual voices. But when pressed, Donal admits something that chills you more than anything else. The thing is, lad, after all this time watching folks like yourself, I've started to envy you. You get to serve the Emperor directly. You get to be part of something eternal, me. I just clean up afterward and wait for my own name to come up on a list someday. The final meal arrives on your 7th day in the palace. It's a feast that would bankrupt noble houses, foods from across the galaxy prepared by master chefs and served on plates of actual precious metals. Amasic wines that have aged for centuries. Grok steaks seasoned with spices that cost more per gram than most citizens earn in a lifetime. Fruits from paradise worlds and delicacies that exist nowhere else in human space. You eat it all because you understand what it represents. This isn't kindness or mercy or even respect for your sacrifice. This is preparation. They're ensuring your bones are as dense as possible, your marrow as rich as it can be made. You're being fattened for slaughter like cattle, but with a sophistication that could only exist in a civilization that has spent 10 millennia perfecting the art of human sacrifice. As you finish the meal, a custodes appears in your cell doorway. His golden armor bears fresh battle scars, and you realize he's just returned from some distant war zone where he killed the Emperor's enemies with the same casual efficiency he'll soon apply to your execution. It is time, he says simply. Time to descend into the depths where the Golden Throne waits. Time to feed the dying God who protects humanity by consuming it piece by piece. Time to discover what it truly means when divinity demands your bones. The descent begins in lifts that plunge through the heart of the Imperial Palace like golden bullets fired into the planet's core. You stand shoulder to shoulder with 47 others, the final group from your transport, selected for simultaneous processing to maximize the efficiency of their deaths. The lift car itself is a masterwork of artisanship, its walls decorated with scenes of the Emperor's Great Crusade, but you barely notice the craftsmanship. Your attention is fixed on the depth counter spinning past numbers that shouldn't be possible. -1 kilometer, -5, -10, -50. The palace extends down through Terra's crust like an inverted mountain, its deepest levels reaching toward the planet's molten core. Each level you pass was built in a different era of imperial history, their architectural styles marking the passage of millennia like geological strata. You descend through Gothic splendor, then Byzantine excess, then structures so ancient their designs predate human expansion into the stars. But it's not the architecture that breaks your sanity. It's the sound. At -20 kilometers, you begin to hear it, a rhythmic pulsing that seems to come from the palace walls themselves. Thrum thrum, thrum thrum, like a massive heartbeat, regular as a chronometer but loud enough to feel in your bones. One of your fellow condemned, a woman from the Forge world Lucius whose augmetic ears can detect frequencies beyond normal human range, begins to scream as the sound overwhelms her enhanced hearing. "It's everywhere," she sobs as tech priests sedate her with neural dampeners. "The sound is in the walls, in the air, in my head. What is that thing?" The Custod's escort doesn't answer directly, but his helmet vox grill crackles with what might be reverence or might be fear. You hear the heartbeat of the master of mankind. 10,000 years he has sustained this rhythm. 10,000 years his will has kept the darkness at bay. -100 kilometers. The lift passes through chambers so vast that their far walls disappear into misty distance, filled with machinery that defies comprehension. Massive cogitators the size of city blocks process streams of data that flow like rivers of light through crystalline conduits. Banks of vat-grown brains float in nutrient solutions, their neural matter enhanced with quantum processors to handle calculations that would burn out normal human minds in milliseconds. This is the Throne Mechanicum, the vast technological infrastructure that supports the Golden Throne's operation. Here, thousands of tech priests and servoskulls maintain systems whose original function has been forgotten for millennia. They tend machines that think and breed and die in cycles measured in centuries, all in service of keeping their God Emperor alive for one more day. -200 kilometers. The temperature begins to rise, not from geothermal activity, but from the energy output of systems that tap directly into Terra's molten core. The very air shimmers with power discharges and exotic radiations that would cook unprotected humans in seconds. Your escort's armor hums with protective field generators, while you and your fellow condemned are shielded by portable void shield generators carried by servitors whose organic components have been replaced with heat-resistant cybernetics. The heartbeat grows stronger, more insistent. Thrum thrum, thrum thrum. You realize it's not just sound. It's a psychic pulse that resonates through the warp itself, visible to your enhanced senses as waves of golden light that flow through the palace structure like blood through arteries. This close to the source, you can feel the Emperor's presence pressing against your mind like a weight that threatens to crush your individual consciousness into fragments. -500 kilometers. Here, the machinery begins to show its true age and purpose. Weapons that could crack planets are built into the palace walls, their targeting systems constantly tracking threats that exist in dimensions parallel to real space. Psyker choirs numbering in the millions maintain psychic barriers that hold back demon armies waiting just beyond the veil of reality. And threading through it all, conduits of a metal that shouldn't exist carry streams of processed human essence toward their ultimate destination. This is when you see the other lifts. Dozens of them, hundreds, all descending in perfect synchronization toward the palace's deepest levels. Each carries its cargo of condemned souls, human beings selected from across the galaxy to feed the Golden Throne's insatiable hunger. The scale becomes clear. Your group of 47 represents one heartbeat in a process that consumes thousands of lives daily, millions annually, billions across the millennia since the Emperor's internment. How many? Matthias whispers, his face pressed against the lift's viewing port as he watches the other transports descending like golden tears. Emperor's mercy, how many people die for this? A tech priest overseeing the transport systems provides the answer with mechanical precision. Current daily consumption rate, 47,000 standard human units. Annual requirement, 17,155,000 units. Total process since throne activation, approximately 171,550,000,000 units. Efficiency rating, optimal. 17 billion human beings, reduced to units in a logistical calculation. Each one someone like you, a person with hopes and fears and dreams, selected by machines and consumed by necessity. The numbers are so vast they lose all meaning, but the individual horror remains. You are one heartbeat in a rhythm of death that has played for 10 millennia and will continue until the stars burn out. Negative 1,000 kilometers. The lift passes through the domain of the throne servitors, beings that were once human, but have been so extensively modified that only their essential biological functions remain. They tend machines that process human sacrifice into forms the Emperor can consume. Bone ground into psychically active calcium dust, marrow refined into spiritual essence, neural tissue converted into pure thought energy. You watch through the viewing ports as endless conveyor systems transport the remains of yesterday's sacrifices toward processing centers that stretch beyond sight. The machinery operates with perfect efficiency, every component designed to extract maximum spiritual energy from human death. Nothing is wasted. Even the final exhalations of the dying are captured and distilled into compounds that enhance the Emperor's psychic power. The horrifying realization dawns. This isn't just murder. This is farming. The Imperium doesn't simply kill its citizens. It cultivates them, breeding billions of humans across millions of worlds to provide a steady harvest of souls for the Golden Throne. Every world, every hive, every settlement exists primarily to produce human lives that can be consumed to keep their god alive. Negative 1,500 kilometers. The heartbeat becomes a physical force that presses against your body with each pulse. Your bones ache in resonance with the sound, your marrow warming as if responding to some ancient call. The other condemned show similar reactions, blood seeping from their noses, eyes unfocusing as their brains struggle to process psychic energies beyond human comprehension. Sister Agatha falls to her knees, her weathered hands pressed against her temples. "I can hear him," she gasps. "The God Emperor, he's calling to us. He knows we're coming. He's hungry." The lift shudders to a halt at negative 2,000 kilometers, its descent finally complete. The doors open with a pneumatic hiss that sounds like a death rattle, revealing a corridor that stretches toward a light so brilliant it should blind you but somehow doesn't. The light pulses in rhythm with the heartbeat, golden and warm and utterly alien. Your custod's escort gestures toward the light with something that might be reverence or might be resignation. Behold, the throne chamber of the master of mankind. Here ends your journey as mortals. Here begins your eternal service to the species. As you take your first step toward that impossible light, you finally understand the true horror of your situation. You're not walking toward your death. You're walking toward something infinitely worse. You're about to discover what it means to be digested by a god, to have your individual existence dissolved into something vast and hungry and utterly inhuman. The Emperor protects, they say, but what they never mention is the price of that protection, and who pays it, one bone at a time. At the heart of everything, beneath 2,000 kilometers of palace, past machines that think and pray and scream in languages older than human speech, beyond chambers where reality itself bends under the weight of accumulated faith and terror, you find the Golden Throne. It is not what you expected. The chamber stretches away in all directions, its boundaries lost in golden mist that shifts and flows like living light. The walls, if walls they can be called, are carved with billions of names. Every human being who has ever fed the Emperor's hunger, inscribed in letters so small they require augmetic enhancement to read. But you can feel them, pressing against your consciousness like whispered prayers from the dead. And there, at the center of it all, sits what remains of the master of mankind. The Golden Throne itself is a fusion of technology and flesh, machine and God, that defies rational description. Ancient beyond measure, its systems pulse with energies that predate human civilization. But it's what sits upon the throne that destroys your ability to think coherently. You expected to see the Emperor as depicted in imperial art, golden, radiant, perfect in his divine majesty. Instead, you find a corpse that refuses to die. His flesh, where flesh remains, has the consistency of ancient parchment, stretched tight over bones that gleam with their own inner light. Tubes and cables burrow into his body at thousands of points, carrying away the constant flow of decay while pumping in the processed essence of human sacrifice. His face, Emperor preserve you, his face, is a battlefield where divinity wars against mortality, features shifting between human and something infinitely other with each labored breath. But his eyes are the worst part. They burn with intelligence and power and something that might be madness or might be perfect clarity. They see everything, past, present, and future stretching in golden threads across 10,000 years of human suffering. And right now, in this moment, they are looking directly at you, Matthias Corven. The voice doesn't come through your ears. It speaks directly into your mind, bypassing your senses entirely and carving itself into your thoughts with letters of fire. Every syllable carries the weight of stellar masses, the authority of someone who has commanded space marines and primarchs, and the fundamental forces of reality itself. You fear what comes next. You wonder if I know your name, your story, your individual existence in the vast sea of humanity I protect. You want to know if your death matters to me beyond its utility. The other condemned fall to their knees around you, overwhelmed by direct psychic contact with the Emperor. Sister Agatha weeps tears of joy and terror, finally face to face with the God she has served her entire life. Matthias clutches his sister's holopict so tightly the crystals crack, his mind fracturing under the pressure of divine attention. I know every name, Matthias Corven. I remember every face. Each soul that feeds my hunger remains within me, their essence woven into the tapestry of my consciousness. You will not simply die. You will become part of something eternal, something necessary, something infinitely larger than the small life you have lived. The machines around the Golden Throne begin their work. Crystalline formations emerge from the chamber floor, their surfaces humming with conversion fields that will transform your bones into spiritual sustenance. The process has been refined over 10 millennia to extract maximum psychic energy while minimizing physical suffering. It should be quick, efficient, almost merciful. But the Emperor's next words shatter any illusion of mercy. You must understand the choice I face with every breath I draw. I can release my hold on life, allow my body to finally die, and ascend to true godhood among the warp's eternal powers. But if I do, the astronomicon fails. The warp storms come. Humanity dies screaming in the darkness between stars, consumed by things that make your nightmares seem like gentle dreams. The crystalline formations pulse with increasing intensity, their conversion fields beginning to interact with your nervous system. You feel your bones warming, your marrow responding to energies that speak directly to the calcium in your skeleton. The process is beginning, and there is no stopping it now. Or I can remain here, suspended between life and death, consuming the lives of my children to maintain my vigil. 47,000 souls daily, 17 million annually. A holocaust measured not in years but in millennia, all to keep the species alive for one more day. You try to speak, to scream, to protest the cosmic injustice of it all, but your vocal cords no longer obey your commands. The conversion process is taking hold, beginning the systematic dissolution of everything that makes you individually human. But your thoughts remain your own, for now, and the Emperor hears them as clearly as spoken words. You wonder if I suffer with each sacrifice, if I feel the weight of every death, the crushing burden of being sustained by the constant murder of my own children. The answer is yes, Matthias Corven. I feel it all. Every death echoes through my consciousness like a wound that never heals. I know each life I consume, each dream I extinguish, each future I make impossible. The chamber fills with the sound of your bones beginning to resonate with the Emperor's own psychic frequency. Around you, the other condemned are undergoing the same transformation, their individual selves dissolving into component energies that will feed the Golden Throne for perhaps another day. You can feel their thoughts blending with your own, personalities merging into something larger and more terrible. But I endure it because the alternative is extinction. I consume my children because the universe demands that choice, their deaths or humanity's end. Every soul I devour is a small evil that prevents an infinite one. Every life I take is a prayer answered, a species preserved, a future made possible. Your consciousness begins to expand, no longer constrained by the boundaries of your individual mind. You can feel the Emperor's presence growing stronger as your essence feeds into his vast psychic matrix. But instead of oblivion, you find something unexpected: connection. You are becoming part of something that spans the galaxy, a consciousness that touches every human soul across millions of worlds. This is what I offer you, Matthias Corven. Not death, but transformation. Not ending, but purpose. Your individual existence will cease, but your essence will help maintain the light that guides humanity through the darkness. You will be part of every ship that navigates by the Astronomican's beacon, every world that remains free of chaos, every child born under the protection of my eternal vigil. As your bones dissolve into pure spiritual energy, as your consciousness merges with the vast collective that sustains the Golden Throne, you finally understand the true horror and necessity of your sacrifice. You are not dying. You are being absorbed into something that might be salvation or might be damnation, but is undeniably eternal. The last coherent thought you manage before your individual self disappears forever is a question that will haunt the collective consciousness you're joining. In a universe that demands such choices, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be saved by something that can no longer claim that title itself? The Emperor's hunger is satisfied, for now. Tomorrow, 47,000 more names will appear on the lists. The great machine of sacrifice will continue its eternal rotation, fed by the bodies and souls of a species that survives only by consuming itself. And in the golden light of the throne chamber, something that was once Matthias Corven and 46 others begins its eternal service, becoming part of the dying god's dream of humanity's future, a future that may be worth any price, or may be the greatest tragedy the galaxy has ever known. In the deepest archives of the Imperial Palace, where servitor scribes with lobotomized minds record the transactions of empire, a single line of text appears in the daily ledgers. Throne feeding quota, fulfilled. Next cycle, initialize in 23, 7 standard hours. 47,000 human beings, people with names and histories and dreams, have just been reduced to a bureaucratic checkmark. Their deaths registered with the same administrative efficiency used to record ammunition expenditures or ration distributions. This is how an empire measures the cost of tomorrow: in souls processed, in bones ground to dust, in the systematic cultivation and harvest of its own children. You sit in the aftermath of witnessing this horror, your mind struggling to process what you've seen. The numbers alone resist comprehension. 17 million humans sacrificed annually to keep the Emperor alive. Over 10,000 years, that equals 170 billion individual deaths, more than the total population of most galaxy-spanning civilizations. An entire species worth of souls fed into the maw of necessity. But the true horror isn't in the scale, it's in the precision. Every aspect of this system has been refined over millennia to maximize efficiency while minimizing waste. The selection algorithms that choose who dies, the transport networks that bring them to Terra, the processing facilities that convert human life into psychic sustenance, the scheduling systems that ensure the Golden Throne never goes hungry for even a moment. It is, by any measure, the most sophisticated logistics operation in human history, dedicated entirely to the systematic murder of its own citizens. Consider the infrastructure required. On millions of worlds across the galaxy, administratum clerks maintain census records that double as harvesting lists. Transport fleets larger than most naval armadas exist solely to carry human cargo to Terra. Entire industries have developed around optimizing the nutritional and spiritual value of sacrificial victims. The Imperium has literally industrialized human sacrifice on a galactic scale, and everyone knows it's happening. From the High Lords of Terra to the lowliest underhive ganger, every citizen of the Imperium understands that their continued existence depends on the systematic execution of their fellow humans. They accept it because the alternative, the death of the Emperor and the subsequent collapse of human civilization, is worse than any individual tragedy. They live with the knowledge that they might be selected tomorrow, that their children might be chosen, that their entire bloodline might be deemed suitable for throne feeding. This creates a civilization built on existential terror. Every imperial citizen lives in constant awareness that their life has value only insofar as it serves the greater good, and that the greatest service they can provide is to die horribly for someone else's benefit. It's a social contract written in blood, signed by necessity, and renewed daily with fresh sacrifice. The psychological implications are staggering. How do you love your children when you know they might be selected for sacrifice? How do you plan for the future when that future might be cut short by administrative decree? How do you maintain hope in a civilization that views your individual existence as a resource to be consumed when convenient? The answer, perversely, is faith. The Imperial Creed provides the psychological framework that makes this horror tolerable by reframing murder as martyrdom. When your death serves the God Emperor directly, when your sacrifice helps maintain the light that protects all humanity, then being selected becomes the highest honor imaginable. The very system that kills you also sanctifies that killing, transforming victims into saints and executioners into holy servants. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this entire system is its essential correctness. Because here's what you cannot escape: no matter how much the scale horrifies you, the Imperium's calculations are accurate. Without the constant sacrifice of human lives to sustain the Golden Throne, the Emperor dies. Without the Emperor, the Astronomicon fails. Without the Astronomicon, human space fragments into isolated worlds that cannot communicate, trade, or defend each other. Those worlds die one by one, consumed by Xeno's predators, chaos incursions, or simple resource collapse. The choice truly is that stark: sacrifice millions to save billions, or lose everything to moral squeamishness. Military strategists call it acceptable losses. Economists call it cost-benefit analysis. Philosophers call it the trolley problem writ large across galactic history. The Imperium calls it Tuesday. Every human saved by diverting resources from the throne feeding program is a human who will die when the system collapses from insufficient sacrifice. Every act of mercy toward individual victims is an act of cruelty toward the species as a whole. The mathematics are inexorable, and they permit no sentiment, no individual consideration, no deviation from the optimal path of maximum human survival. This creates a civilization that cannot afford heroes who save individual lives at the cost of systemic stability. The Imperium doesn't celebrate those who resist the selection process or protect the condemned. It executes them as traitors to humanity itself. Mercy becomes treason. Compassion becomes betrayal. The greatest virtue becomes the willingness to participate in necessary evil without flinching. And yet, in the deepest archives, in records accessible only to the highest authorities, there are rumors of the Emperor's own thoughts on this system. fragmentary psychic impressions recorded by sanctioned psychers during communion with the Golden Throne, words that suggest even he, the architect of this necessity, the beneficiary of this sacrifice, finds it unbearable. Every death diminishes me. Every soul consumed makes me less human, more monster. I am becoming the very thing I once fought against, a god that demands blood sacrifice from its worshippers. But what choice do I have? Let them all die free, or keep them alive as slaves to my hunger. If these records are authentic, then the Emperor himself questions the system that sustains him. The dying god who benefits from humanity's sacrifice may be its greatest victim, forced to consume his children to prevent their extinction, becoming more monster than man with every death that feeds his eternal hunger. This adds a final layer of horror to the entire system. It may be traumatizing its primary beneficiary as much as its victims. The Emperor may be as trapped by necessity as those he consumes, locked into a pattern of behavior that ensures survival at the cost of everything that once made him human. So where does this leave humanity? Alive, certainly. Expanding across the galaxy, maintaining a civilization of unprecedented scale and complexity. But at what cost? The Imperium survives by systematically destroying the very qualities that once defined human excellence: compassion, individual dignity, the belief that every life has inherent worth. The human species lives on, but perhaps the human spirit died long ago, consumed not by the Golden Throne but by the necessities that feed it. Tomorrow, the sun will rise over Terra, casting its light across palaces built from the bones of the faithful. The great machines will hum to life, processing new selections from across the galaxy. Transport ships will begin their journeys, carrying fresh cargo toward their destiny. The system will continue with perfect efficiency, as it has for 10,000 years, as it may for 10,000 more. And somewhere in the vast Imperium of Man, 47,000 people will wake up to the sound of approaching footsteps, the whisper of unrolling parchment, the voice of authority speaking their names with deadly certainty. One of those names might be yours. The Emperor protects, they say. But sometimes, protection demands everything you are, everything you've been, and everything you might have become. Sometimes the greatest act of love is to die so others might live. Sometimes the price of tomorrow is measured in the bones of today. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But beneath that war, feeding it and sustained by it, there is something worse. The quiet, efficient, necessary horror of a species that has learned to eat itself to survive. And the terrible truth is, it might be worth it.